guys. Welcome to episode 2 of Waxing On. Today we're going to look at some albums from the Beatles, and I have one that I'm going to focus on a little later that's probably one of my favorites. I have to say I started out with the Beatles early on, like everybody else. Now I haven't got the actual albums because they've been lost, but I've replaced them with the CDs. With the Beatles and the Beatles' second album. This was probably the first one I had with the Beatles was one I acquired a little later, but second album was one, and this was a good introduction into what they were doing at the time. Now, over the years, I kind of lost track of the Beatles, and I didn't get back into listening to them until late 60s when Sgt. Pepper came along. A friend of mine, his father gone to England on a business trip, brought the album back, and I think we played it continually for the whole summer. It was unlike anything we'd heard before, and it was really a great album. There was a lot of music, but a lot of other behind-the-scenes things going on in that as well. This was during the peak, I guess, of the Paul is dead scenario. And there was lots of tips and little hints towards Paul being dead and how they'd replaced him in the music and in the album itself. On the album cover, if you recall the front picture, they've got a picture with a hand over Paul's head, kind of symbolizing somebody giving him last rites or at a funeral. On the back cover, we had the picture of the Beatles facing us, except for Paul, who had his back turned again, which they were saying was quite symbolic. And in the center spread, we had this photo. I don't know if you can see that. There we go. With Paul with a little badge on the shoulder that they said, I'm just going to find it on here. Excuse me. Looks like this, which I've lost now. There we go. Looks like this, which they said stood for officially pronounced dead, as another idea that Paul had passed away. Now, in fact, what it is actually a tribute to Ontario. So the Beatles gave us a little shout out there with this badge that he was wearing, because Paul's badge is actually this one. I'll get it in close enough, which is the shoulder flash for the Ontario Provincial Police. So the Beatles had kind of given us a little nod there with their tribute on that album. As well as music in the album, we had A Day in the Life, which talked about the car crash. So they continued on from a number of albums at this point. By the time I got to the album I'm going to talk about today, they were still dropping little hints here and there. Now, from the excess of Sgt. Pepper, we went into Magical Mystery Tour, which was the soundtrack to the TV movie, and it had some of their singles on, with Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields Forever, and more of a soundtrack album for the first half. For me, where things really came together was with their next album. Yes, that's just like what it looks like. The infamous White Album with no title. We've got, and I don't imagine you can see it on there because it's so small, but the Beatles embossed on the front. There was actually no black printing. There's no list of songs, nothing listing who's performing on the album, just the straight up White Album. They said it was to contrast the excess of Sgt. Pepper, that they had gone this way. But again, a very good album, lots of good stuff. Some nice giveaways in the album. Okay, we got 8x10s of all the band members. We got a big photo sheet with lyrics. It was all kinds of great add-ons they gave away. Plus, it's a 2-album set. Now, this one was a little different than some of the early Beatles work because a lot of this was done by Beatles on their own. They would do their recording of songs and then they kind of all put it together. And they had some special guests in, most notably on While My Guitar Gently Weeps, we have Eric Clapton doing the guitar solo. But some very diverse and some good hits in there. We had Obla Di Obla Da, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, Martha My Dear. There was a lot of stuff that was really good in the album, a few classic hits, but it's the album that kind of stuck with me. I've had it a couple of times now. Certainly on the vinyl, I had it on cassette, now I have it digitally. It's been one that's kind of, to me, represents some of the best of what the Beatles have done. Now, I'm not going to say it's the best album. I know there's a lot of you out there that may have other favorites that you like. This just happens to be my favorite from my collection. So, that's it. If you get a chance to check it out, check out the White Album. See what you think. Lots of good stuff, lots of individual tunes. Even Ringo gets a chance to sing again. And we'll see you probably in another couple of days. We'll take a look at a couple of other classic albums. Till then, stay home, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.